My brother swore he'd never get married, so my parents took a risk having me late in life just to carry on the family name. But my mom died in childbirth, and my dad vanished without a trace. I bounced between my aunt's place and my uncle's place until I turned 7. At that point, every single relative had hit their limit and dragged the whole thing to court. They demanded my brother take custody of me, and the day the court ruling came down, I struggled and stumbled, dragging my tiny little suitcase, and with trembling hands, I grabbed the sleeve of my brother as he walked out of the courthouse. The man frowned and turned around, and I came face to face with my brother for the very first time. Those eyes were full of cold hatred, and he looked down at the hand gripping his sleeve. His perfectly pressed suit jacket had a small crumple in the cuff right where I was holding on. My hand was shaking, and under that warning look in his eyes, I was scared enough to want to let go. What's with that look? Suit of the court already issued its ruling. Did you really think you could keep dodging this? My uncle spoke with all the righteous authority he could muster and held up the court order. Both parents are gone, and the eldest son steps up as the head of the family. It's been 7 years. Your own little brother should have been your responsibility a long time ago. I had no other options. I couldn't even take care of myself. The hand gripping my brother's sleeve was terrified to its core, but I still couldn't bring myself to let go. But my brother's face was twisted with disgust, and he reached out and shoved me away. His cold eyes swept over to my aunt and uncle, and his voice came out sharp as steel. Wasn't I the one the Sioux family threw out? So what family do I have? What little brother? My uncle was at a loss for words. Then, go fight it out with the court, because Soonian has been handed to you. Don't even think about dumping him back on us. I stood there with my head hanging low, too scared to make a sound. The temperature had dropped. The wind was blowing hard, but my face felt like it was on fire. My clenched hand wouldn't stop shaking, and my palm was soaked in sweat. I knew nobody wanted me. My brother shot me one last icy look. He let out a cold laugh, like he didn't want to waste another second. He walked straight past me, got into the car parked nearby, and slammed the door shut. The engine started, and the car was about to pull away. My aunt's face went dark, and as she and my uncle rushed toward the car, she shoved me hard. Are you really just going to stand there like an idiot instead of running after him? You little deadweight. Are you still trying to hang around me and your uncle? I got knocked hard to the ground. My vision went dark for a second, but I didn't have time to think about the pain. I scrambled back to my feet in a panic and looked over. My aunt had already thrown herself in front of my brother's car, leaning her whole body against it, both fists slamming on the hood. This is outrageous. A rich guy driving a fancy car is really going to break the law and abandon his own little brother. More and more people stopped to stare, and a crowd started gathering. My aunt's crying got louder and louder, and my uncle was hollering at the bystanders, telling them the whole sob story. The crowd swelled, and the noise picked up on all sides. It was disrupting the courthouse, so a judge came out to try to smooth things over. But my aunt and uncle wanted nothing to do with him. So the judge walked up to my brother's car window, knocked on the glass, and eventually the window came down, revealing my brother's face pulled so tight it looked like it might snap. He kept white-knuckling the steering wheel. The veins on the back of his hand were bulging. Mr. Sioux, do you need us to step in? Wait, isn't that the forensic specialist Sioux? He helped crack that major case last month. A specialist that well-known must be making serious money, and he really won't take care of one little brother. The whispers and sighs mixed with my aunt and uncle's scene, and my brother's furious expression gradually drained into something pale and humiliated. He ducked his head and shot a look in my direction, and I felt a flash of hope mixed with panic. I hauled my suitcase and ran awkwardly and desperately towards the back of the car, fumbling around on the bumper. I couldn't figure out how to pop the trunk, and the crowd just watched the spectacle. Nobody bothered to come help me, so I gripped the handle and just hauled the whole suitcase into the back seat with me before I could even sit down. My brother had already stomped the gas, and the car basically shot forward. I never saw it coming. I slammed into the back of the front seat along with my suitcase. Stars exploded in my vision, and the sting hit my nose so hard, tears just spilled out. In the rearview mirror was my brother's face, dark and absolutely seething. My head was spinning and throbbing, and through the fog I could hear my brother's cold voice. You're just like them. I couldn't make sense of it. I just sat there trembling, trying to stay upright, gripping the suitcase with whatever strength I had left. Always playing dumb, always playing the victim. Just like them, I still didn't really understand, but at least I knew it wasn't a compliment. So I twisted my hands together in my lap nervously. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a photo hanging from the rearview mirror. All the windows were cracked open. The wind blowing in made the photo sway silently, and I could barely make out the face of a girl I didn't recognize. She looked maybe 17 or 18, fair skin, a really pretty smile. I didn't dare look too long. I dropped my gaze after just a second, and my stomach started turning. By the time I absolutely couldn't hold it back anymore, the speeding car suddenly screeched to a stop. We pulled into a residential complex, and I shoved the door open and jumped out. I ran to the nearest trash can and threw up hard. By the time I was done and turned back around, my brother still hadn't gotten out of the car, so I walked carefully over. Through the half-open window, I could see his pale, hollow profile. He was holding a handkerchief, carefully wiping down the photo of the girl hanging inside the car. She had to be someone who mattered a lot to him, the way he cleaned. It was so gentle. His whole face was soft for just a moment, then the cold mask came right back. He opened the door and got out, and I grabbed my suitcase and carefully followed him into the elevator. When we got to the front door, I was afraid of tracking dirt in, so I quietly slipped off my shoes. My brother led me to a room tucked away in the farthest corner of the first floor. He didn't even look back at me. He clearly couldn't stand the sight of me and just dropped one cold line. Go in and stay there. Don't come out unless you have to. Try not to let me see your face. I nodded right away. I was about to push the door open when a little girl's voice suddenly came from behind me. Souza, who is that? My hand jerked hard on the handle. I turned around and saw a face that was thin, almost ghostly pale. She looked about the same age as me, and she was holding a porcelain doll. Her pitch black eyes were fixed on me, like she was staring at some monster that had broken into her territory. She couldn't hide her fear and rejection. I instinctively shrank back, taking 2 steps back, but my brother's face, which had been frozen cold the whole time, suddenly softened. He took off his jacket, walked over and draped it over the girl's thin shoulders. Then he grabbed a pair of slippers, crouched down, and slipped them onto her bare feet. Suze, I'm scared of him. Can he not live here? Suze gently tousled her hair. He's just a relative of mine who needs a place to stay. Once things settle down, he'll be gone. I didn't understand why he let her call him Suze, and I had no idea who this little girl was. I just felt unsettled to my core. And screwed up the courage to speak up quietly. Sue, I have nowhere else to go. The little girl let out a soft whimper, and Suze turned back around, glaring at me with irritation. I'm not your brother. Did I not make that clear? Go inside and don't come out. I didn't dare say another word. I scrambled to pull the door open, slipped inside and shut the door behind me. The girl's crying continued from the other side of the door. I had never once been soothed like that, and the way my brother coaxed her so gently somehow sounded really nice. Most of the room was crammed with junk, and a small bed in the corner looked like it had been shoved in last minute. I lay down on it and stared out the window. The night outside was pitch black. I had lost count of how many places I had lived. My brother hated the Sue family, and by extension, he hated me for being a part of it. But the truth was, no one in the Sue family had ever liked me or treated me like family either. My mom died right after having me, and my dad couldn't accept that I was a boy. He took out his anger on me for a whole year, then left with some woman he'd gotten pregnant, and never came back. After that, I was like a ball, kicked back and forth between relatives who were sick of me. I worked as hard as I could to make myself useful. I hauled boxes at my uncle's shop, I changed diapers and did laundry for my aunt's little grandson. On the way to and from school, I collected bottles to sell. The money I made went toward my uncle-in-law's school every semester. I shamelessly begged my teacher to let me have an extra portion of the meal subsidy. My aunt's grandson was rough with me once and left me injured, and a nurse got suspicious that I was being abused. She pulled me aside and offered to call the police for me, and I was in real pain. But I still put on a smile and told her I'd just been playing around and wasn't careful. I did everything I could to keep everyone happy, and I survived 7 years bouncing through relatives' homes, eating as little as possible, spending as little as possible. But not being wanted is just not being wanted, and in the end, they all ran out of patience. They would rather take it to court than keep me around, and I lay on the bed tossing and turning, curled under the blanket. But I still felt cold, and I still felt hollow, like I had left something behind somewhere. How could it feel this empty? Every time I moved to a new place over the years, I would get this same feeling. But the truth was, everything I owned had always been just a few worn-out pieces of clothing. I'd also had some books at one point, but my aunt said my brother would buy me new ones when he enrolled me in a new school, and before we even got to court, she sold off my books and used the money to buy candy for her little grandson. I pulled my mind back, rolled out of bed, pulled out the 2 worn shirts from my suitcase, and hugged them to my chest, lay back down, and finally felt just a little bit grounded. My head was foggy and swollen, and it felt both burning hot and freezing cold at the same time. I must have had a fever. I always seemed to get sick. I had once heard a doctor say that my mom was already pretty old when she had me. So, I was never very healthy, and I curled up tight trying to hug myself warm. But I was still cold. I was shaking head to toe when there was a knock at the door, and the little girl's voice came through. Come out, Suze, wants you. My head was a complete haze as I climbed out of bed. My legs felt like they were sinking into cotton, and I followed her in a daze as she headed upstairs. She pushed open a door, and I followed her in. But my brother wasn't there. It looked like a study with a bookshelf inside. And on the floor next to the bookshelf was a picture frame that had fallen. The glass looked cracked. I recognized the face in it. It was the same girl from the photo hanging in my brother's car. But this photo in the frame was black and white. Before I could take a closer look, the girl suddenly screamed, and my brother came storming in stone-faced. My head slowly started to clear, and I could hear the girl crying to my brother. My brother completely lost it. Get out, get out! I'm telling you right now, I'm done taking care of you. Everything connected to the Sue family makes me sick. Get out of here. Have the Sue family drag me back to court? It was already the middle of the night, and I had been thrown out. I had nowhere to go. I sat numbly on a bench in the landscaped area of the complex, and my forehead kept getting hotter. My head felt like a swarm of bees had moved in, and my ears were filled with a constant roar. I tilted my head back and saw what looked like a sky full of stars. But when I blinked, they were all gone. City skies at night don't really have stars. Not like back when I was living in that small town when my aunt would punish me by making me stand outside. I could look up and see a whole sky full of stars keeping me company, and I lowered my gaze. It felt a little like grief.